Hi all, AD here from Haunts and Jaunts. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. I'm in deepest, darkest Kent and I'm at Old Soar Manor, and this was a medieval knight's home. It was built in the late 13th century and it's got a chapel and an undercroft. But I want to tell you an interesting story quickly about here. I'm going to insert some photographs. And if you look at the top of the screenshot, this is when I was last here, 17th September 2025. That day we visited, I filmed here, and we filmed before and then I filmed another place afterwards. But the footage from here, for some reason, I've got the file but it's got no footage on it. So that's why you've never seen a video from here, because I did film it and it never came out. Whatever that reason is, I really don't know. As I say, the footage before recorded and I went somewhere afterwards and it recorded. So fingers crossed it comes out today. So let's go and have an explore. Tucked away in the quiet countryside of Kent, down some narrow single-track lanes surrounded by rolling fields, stands a building that feels almost frozen in time. Welcome to Old Soar Manor. And at first glance it may not look like much, a modest stone structure partially hidden beside a much later farmhouse. But don't let its size fool you, as this is one of the rarest surviving examples of a 13th century knight's dwelling in England, dating all the way back to around the year 1290. And what remains here today offers a remarkable intimate glimpse into the life of a wealthy medieval family, how they lived, how they defended themselves, and how they carved out comfort for themselves in a turbulent world. Old Soar Manor was originally built by a man named William Lahore in the late 13th century. Now at that time England was under the rule of King Edward I, and it was a period marked by conflict, expansion and strict social hierarchy. Land was power, and manor houses like this one's was a symbol of status, wealth and authority. But soon after its construction, the manor came into the hands of the Culpeper family, and these were one of Kent's most prominent landowning families during the Middle Ages. And that would shape the story of this place for generations. Now, Old Soar Manor was never intended to be a grand castle or a fortress. Instead, it was something more subtle. It was just a fortified home designed for both comfort and protection. Most manor houses of this period were built around a central great hall. This was the heart of daily life, a large communal space where meals were eaten, business was conducted, and even legal matters were settled. There was no chimney as we know it today, and smoke from the central fire would have simply risen into the rafters and escaped through the roof. Servants slept on the floor, and the lord and his family lived alongside them, though there would have been a very clear divide in status. But here's where Old Soar Manor becomes fascinating. The part of the manor house that survives today is not the Great Hall, but it's actually the private quarters. Now these rooms were known as the solar and adjoining chambers, and this is where the lord and his family retreated for privacy, warmth and relative luxury. The separation between public and private space was still a developing idea in medieval architecture, and Old Soar Manor captures that transition perfectly. And what we see today at Old Soar Manor is a compact but highly sophisticated structure built from local Kentish ragstone. And what survives here still today is the solar, or the upper chamber where we are today. There's a small private chapel, and beneath those rooms where we walked in were the undercrofts, and these were essentially stone cellars used for storage. The solar itself was a surprisingly comfortable space for its time, and it would have had a large fireplace, which was obviously an important luxury in those days, and these beautiful large windows which would have once been fitted with shutters to keep out the cold. And I don't know what this piece of wood whether it was an old door or was an old shutter, but there's loads of graffiti there. There's even a window seat in here, and it's a small detail that brings a human touch to this otherwise defensive structure. And it also had a garderobe, which is a toilet. So even in the 1200s, people had indoor toilets. And at Old Soar, waste dropped down a vertical shaft into a pit below, and one that had to be manually cleaned by workers, and they were called gong farmers. I mean, not exactly the most glamorous of jobs, but an essential part of daily life. Although Old Soar Manor wasn't a castle, it was far from defenceless, and this building's design reveals a constant awareness of danger. The private chambers were located on this upper floor, which would have made them harder to access. The stairways and passageways were narrowed and angled. They were deliberately designed like this to slow down intruders. Arrow loops, thin vertical slits in the wall, allowed defenders to fire arrows while remaining protected. And even the garderobe shaft, oddly enough, posed a potential vulnerability. So in theory, someone desperate enough could attempt to climb up through it. I mean, what a disgusting thought that is. So the layout of the manor wasn't just about comfort, it was also about survival. Now, during these times, law enforcement would have been minimal, and wealth made you a sitting target. There's some accounts even suggest that the Culpeper family themselves may have gained wealth through less than honourable means, and this includes kidnapping and forced marriages. But whether true or not, it adds a darker edge to the story of this quiet countryside retreat. Within the small chapel here at Old Soar Manor, one story has echoed far beyond the manor's documented history, and it's a tale not of knights or nobles, but of a young dairymaid named Jenny. Now, according to local folklore dating back to the 18th century, when the manor was owned by the Geary family, and Jenny was said to have been made pregnant, some versions claimed by a local priest, others simply by a man who abandoned her. Desperate and with nowhere to run, she is said to have gone to the chapel seeking help. But what happened next is where the story turns darker. The legend claims that, weak with hunger and so distressed, she approached the piscina, the small stone basin used for ritual washing, and she collapsed here. She struck her head, and she is said to have drowned in just a few inches of water, a detail which many have questioned, but which has become central to the tale. At the time, her death was believed to be suicide, and so she was buried in unconsecrated ground. But since then, many stories have persisted of her presence still lingering here. Soft footsteps are heard in the chapel, sudden drops in temperature, and there's even been sightings of a shadowy priest-like figure near the basin where she died. There is no historical record to confirm any of this, and much of the story varies depending on who tells it, but standing alone in that quiet chapel, it's easy to see how such a tragic legend could take root and refuse to fade. Like many medieval buildings, Old Soar Manor did not remain untouched, and in 1780 the original timber Great Hall was demolished and replaced with a red brick farmhouse which still stands here today. But what did survive are the stone-built private chambers, the strongest and most durable parts of the structure. Now today, Old Soar Manor is cared for by the National Trust and is open to visitors, and it's got this wonderful display inside that goes into much more detail about how Old Soar Manor has evolved over the years, how it would have been used and what daily life would have been like. So you can read a little bit more online or pause the video here if you want to read a little bit more. Old Soar Manor may not have the scale of a castle or the fame of a palace, but what it offers is something rarer: authenticity. This is not a reconstruction or a polished tourist attraction. It's a genuine survival from the 13th century, offering a direct connection to the medieval past. A place where architecture tells a story of power, privacy, fear, and everyday life. So next time you're exploring Kent, take the road less travelled and step into one of England's best kept historical secrets. I'm going to wrap the video up here. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, if you could please like, subscribe and hit the hype button, I really would appreciate it. And if you want to support the channel a little bit more, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link down below, and I will pop in the description the link to the website if you want to find out a little bit more information about Old Soar Manor. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.